Welcome back. This is Bent Discipline with another in the series. This one I'd like to focus on relationships and why is it so difficult for female subs to find a good male master? Now, this one actually got a lot of attention on FetLife, a lot of people back and forth, and I wanted to go into it because it's so interesting, and I had to be very specific because it's not only female submissive looking for a good male master, but even more so for male submissives looking for a good dominant, a female dominant. But we're going to focus right now on female submissives looking for a good male master. Why is it so difficult for them to find one? And I broke it down here for you. These are obviously my opinions. Some of these are from statistics that I've garnered off the internet, which I can show you afterwards. But there's two major issues. Number one is social acceptance, and the second part is predatory males. Now, the social acceptance part boils down to it not being okay for males to be dominant against or with females in our society. Proper society dictates that we are polite to females. And in public, that totally makes sense. In private, that's a totally different thing. And unfortunately, there's probably a great deal more dominant males that would embrace their dominant side if they felt they could. But there's so much pressure in our society to be I don't want to say submissive, but to be nice and fair and polite to females, that I think that the average male dominant doesn't feel that they can explore their dominance in private because of that. If they're going on a date for the first time, how do you bring up the fact that you like bondage and kinky play with someone that you don't even know? It's very difficult, and often maybe there's a submissive that meets a dominant, but they never really open up and realize that they both want and need that, and that's because of the social pressure in our society to not think it's okay. And it's more difficult for a male to show that he's dominant in public and in private than for a female to admit that she's submissive. And the reason I'm saying that is because of the peer pressure that it's, the Me Too, the wife abuse, the whatever it is in our society that's not okay. It's never okay to hit a woman, even in private, except for inside of a contract when it's consensual. So because of all these stipulations, it's very difficult for a man to come forward and express his dominance and want to be that person. I remember one time I was in a crafting store. I was in Michael's, and I was in an aisle that dealt with leather. A mother and a daughter came in, and they were looking for stuff, but they were completely lost. They didn't know what they were looking for, like where to find it. And so I offered to help. I said, listen, I don't work here, but I know this aisle quite well. Can I help you find something? And I helped them find what they're looking for. The young woman started hitting on me, and the mother was saying, what are you doing? I thought we were here for leather, not for a guy. And I couldn't tell her in public that she's probably not my type. I couldn't simply say, hey, you're a pretty girl, but you're probably vanilla. I'm a dominant, and it's just not going to work. So what I did is I said, let's exchange numbers, and we'll text each other. In the texting, one of the first things I said was, have you ever seen anything like 50 Shades of Grey? Anything that BDSM related? And she says, oh, what? Are you one of those guys who likes to tie up women and beat them? And in my mind, I'm thinking, well, maybe, depends. But you see, the point is that it's not accepted. And even that was frowned upon. When I first started in the community, I was on, this was before the FET existed and some of the other platforms. When I was in a regular vanilla website like Plenty of Fish, I would post exactly who and what I was and what I was looking for. And I would get connected with people that were actually trying to taunt me. They assumed that there was something wrong with me and that I was a woman abuser, and they were just trying to get me angry to, I don't know, frustrate me. I'm not really sure what their motivation was. They didn't realize what BDSM was and that it was consensual and that we were doing things together. In any case, getting back to where we were here, yes, there are a lot of stigmas attached to males being dominant. And I think that stops many of the potential doms from coming out and being fully embracing their dominant side sexually and mentally, emotionally. I mean, I lived inside that box for a long time before I was fortunate to come out of it. So that's one part of it. The other part of it is there's a lot of predatory males. Males in general are looking to procreate and have sex and whatnot. This to them, if they've watched too much porn, is like the ultimate because these women are just down in their opinion, which is not true at all for any males out there. Subs are not just kinky. They don't just want to have sex. For them, it's more of a mental, emotional thing. But the view has been skewed by the porn that's out there, unfortunately. So they think that this is the promised land, if you will, of sex. So they come on and they go, oh, I just have to pretend to be a little kinky, a little, tough. I don't have to really know what I'm doing, and I will attract females. And one of the things they'll do is they'll show their body and maybe their privates, thinking that that's what they want, which is completely not. That is not what females want, nor subs want. They don't just want to look at your penis. But that's just one thing that you can tell when you go on a site like that and you see that, you know that they're not actual DOMs, because DOMs don't need to show their junk in order to attract a submissive. Back to where we were. So there's two things happening. One, there's not as many actual DOMs willing to show who they are and what they are and be part of the community because they're afraid of the stigma that's attached to it. And there's an influx of fake DOMs just looking for a piece of ass. So the combination of the two leaves very few actual DOMs in the community relative to the total number of male pretend DOMs on the site. So here's some statistics. Statistically, there's a higher percentage of individual females that identify as submissive, 96%, than there are males who identify as dominant, 75%, with only 48% being pure dominant. Now, I've gotten some flack for this. This is statistically accurate, and I can show you the stats afterwards. But I've gotten some extra flack because I've noticed something, and not everybody agrees with me. So I'm going to say it. Just realize it's only my opinion, and please don't attack me on it. The thing is that 48% of pure dominance, meaning that they would only be considered dom, they wouldn't be considered a switch. The ones that are switch is the difference, which is 27%. Now, the thing that I've noticed, and I've talked to many subs, is that they will start a relationship with a switch, and the moment that they've started the relationship, it goes from them being domed by this switch to them being the dom of that switch. And a sub doesn't necessarily want to be the dom of a sub. So they kind of like they're sold something that they didn't actually want. I mean, I'm sure two switches, a male and a female switch, would have a wonderful time because they can both top or bottom whatever they want. The unfortunate part is that some of these quote unquote switches are actually male submissives. And I understand why, because it's so difficult for them to find a female dominant that they want anything they can get. And one of the things that they can get is if they play the role of a switch or a partial dom, they can attract a submissive that doesn't have a dom. Once they're in that relationship, say, I want you to dom me. And unfortunately, that's the way it's going to play out for the rest of their relationship, where the submissive female is now doming the actually submissive male. And now I've gotten a lot of flack on that. Maybe it's true, maybe it's not. This is just something I've noticed. And so those numbers are definitely skewed. And how many of those 27% are actually male submissives, no one's really sure. But there's definitely a mismatch. If you go 96% submissive versus 48, that's 2 to 1. Now, how many of those people are actually coming onto the community? I would hazard to say that a lot less of the dominant males are actually true dominant males are actually finding their way onto the community because there's a little bit of guilt. From my own personal experience, I had a lot of repressed guilty feelings towards what I was thinking about, what I was feeling, what kind of fantasies were going through my mind as a child, teenager, I guess. So I could see how a lot of those people would not ever make it. Whereas a submissive, it's in our society, it's okay for a female to be submissive. It's totally fine, and nobody will, um, you know, think ill of you if you are submissive. Okay, so the next section is there are two social stigmas attached to dominant, and even with the release of 50 Shades of Grey and the BDSM references in TV shows from CSI to House to Cards, House of Cards, is still a faux pas to hit people, mostly because they don't believe or know it's consensual, which we already mentioned. This means there are more women willing to accept that they are submissive than men accept they are dominants. So the actual number of females to males in the community is much higher. If you've been in a munch or an event, you will notice this. So there's these public events that we go to, they're dinners or drinks, or maybe they're an event where people are bound and stuff. There's always a higher ratio, at least I found that, there's a higher ratio of females, mostly submissive, some switches, occasionally a dom, to male true doms, not submissive, but actual doms. So, I mean, I've noticed every single time I've gone, there's always a mixed match, a huge mixed match. Moving on. Number 3, becoming a good master is a process that takes both time and practice, which concentrates the skills in the few, not the many. Very few subs are willing to put up with a new master who has little or no experience, and this means the good get better and the new get none. In comparison, subs are accepted even if they have no experience. Now, from my personal experience, it was very difficult for me to acquire a sub, and I actually lost a sub to a more experienced master. And it had nothing to do with looks or age or affluence. It had all to do with giving this sub what she needed. And when I first started, I was not qualified to be a master. I was not qualified to be a dominant. I was just, figuring things out, and it was quite painfully obvious that I didn't know what I was doing. And as a result, I lost my first real submissive, I would say, because I didn't know what I was doing, and rightfully so. I didn't deserve her, and it was a painful lesson, and it actually helped me become a better dominant, because I realized that there's more to just showing up. There's more to this than just showing up. You've actually got to put some time and effort into bettering yourself. Okay, 4, the community has been invaded by opportunistic males, non-doms, who have watched too much porn, which we talked about, and are just looking for sex. The number of fake doms as a comparison to actual masters, anyone guess, but it's very high. I was talking to a submissive the other day, and she thinks it's 20 to 1. I was guessing 8 or 10 to 1. The actual number is hard to gauge. I guess it depends on your community and where you're from. It's inordinately high. The true masters don't need to go to events to pick up subs. They don't need to chase subs. So if someone on the community is messaging you or IMing you, more than likely they're either a new dom or they're not a dom at all, because the actual dom one would probably have a sub or be very busy already. So that they're not going to be quickly finding out who's the new sub in the community. So that's a pretty good giveaway. Also, if their pictures mostly contain their body and they don't have very much content about what they believe and think and their training methodology or anything else, it's more likely that they're just interested in sex and not interested in actual developing a relationship or the community itself. So look for someone who actually cares about the community and gives back to the community, who has references. But the ratio of the posters who have no references, just pictures of their body and no content, compared to ones that are mostly content, and you'll see that there's a huge discrepancy, unfortunately. So this post got a lot of people talking, mostly good. I had to give the references here, which I will keep in the comments below. These are actual references. It comes with some slides, which I'll also include. It shows the ratios. It's important to understand that, it's difficult for subs, unfortunately, to find a good male master. And it's more important that they forego the first guy they see, because it may not be the right one. It's it's better to lose out on one than to make a poor choice. So take your time, learn about prospective dominant. Don't just jump into a relationship. Don't accept his word for everything. Make sure that they have references. Um, Find out more about him. Don't just assume what he says is true, because often, and unfortunately, I've seen in some YouTube posts, there are predatory males that use different platforms to attract females, and it's unfortunate, but it does happen. Um, the best doms you can find are the ones that are not looking for you, the ones that that are just doing their own thing. Maybe they've got an existing sub. You can learn from them. Maybe they've got friends in the community that they can introduce you to. Uh, just take your time. Don't be in a rush, and be patient. Okay? Be safe.